Thank you for joining us for Managing Through the Crisis, where we've been bringing you conversations with Harvard Business School faculty on what business leaders and organizations can do to manage through this crisis that we find ourselves in, truly unprecedented times. Today, we're going to be focusing in on small business, which really seems to be bearing the brunt of the impact so far, the economic impact of the crisis. And we're really fortunate to have with us today Karen Mills. Before joining the faculty here, Karen was the chief administrator of the Small Business Administration under President Obama, and she knows this subject inside and out, and she's been really busy at work trying to make things better for small businesses. Karen, thanks for joining me.
Thanks very much for having me.
We've got some questions for you today, some that we're going to do just to sort of set the landscape, but we've got questions that some of our viewers sent in that really get to the heart of their concerns about small businesses. And I know you'll be able to give them some good counsel and advice. I just want to start by asking you, how are you doing? You've been working pretty hard on this.
I would have to say I am flat out right now trying to get this last part of the bill through Congress, because small business is really under duress. And it looks like some of the things that are going to happen in this bill are going to help. So whatever I can do, I've been trying to do.
That's great. We hear a lot about small business. People know that it's an important part of the economy of the country, but can you just sort of paint a picture for us? Like, how important is small business overall in the American economic landscape?
Well, small business is a critical part of the U.S. economy. And in fact, at this moment, I think people are realizing how important it is. Half the people who work in this country own or work for a small business. So that's half the jobs. There's 30 million small businesses. 24 million of these people actually are self-employed. They are the gig economy workers. So they're a critical part of the small business land. And right now, as you know, this part of the economy is under extreme duress because of the virus.
Yeah. I've read that most businesses probably weren't as well prepared as they might have been for something like this. I think most American households probably weren't as well prepared as they would like to have been. But can you give a little more detail into how well prepared most of the small businesses might have been coming into this?
You know, small businesses have very low cash buffers. We know this is true of some individuals as well, that they don't have $400 to weather a storm. Small businesses have on average 27 days of cash buffer. And we know this for sure because JP Morgan Institute, which is the sort of not-for-profit research arm of JP Morgan, has at its disposal all of the data of all of the bank accounts of 3 million small businesses, anonymized. And a few years ago, they looked at the cash balances and they found that America's small businesses have a month's worth of cash, and people like restaurant owners, they have only about 17 days worth of cash. So even if you are prepared, if suddenly you have to shut your doors and your revenue stream goes to zero, or maybe just a fraction, 10 or 20% of what it used to be, then if you continue to pay your workers and pay your rent, you will be out of money in somewhere between 2 weeks and 4 weeks. And when you run out of cash as a small business, you're dead. So we have a real crisis on our hands, and small business owners have already shuttered their doors. We just saw 3.3 million people file for unemployment. And I would bet over half of those people are small business employees.
Karen, you were seeing the 2008 recession sort of up close, more so than most people. Can we learn anything from what happened there? Are there similarities, or is this just fundamentally different, what's happening today?
Well, the first quarter that I was in office in 2009, we lost 1.8 million small business jobs. And we were able to do some things with the SBA loan guarantee program, and we got 1,000 banks back to lending, and we did $30 billion of SBA lending that year, record number. So that was a pretty traumatic time. This is tenfold the problem. We did 30 billion. The number in the bill to go to small business is 349 billion. And we wonder, is that going to be enough? And the problem is different. last time we had the banks not in a good place. We had the banks, full of bad mortgages and they couldn't make loans.
Mhm.
Today we have small businesses who can't open their doors. And it's a completely different problem, so we need a different solution. Luckily, we've got a couple of solutions, some in the bill and some that were enacted last week through SBA disaster loans that actually, I believe, are tailor-made for this situation. We just have to get them executed now.
Yeah. Let's talk about the bill a little bit. It's really fresh, just out, just approved. What are the things that are in there that will give small business owners encouragement?
Well, I do say that I never thought I would see the day where the number 349 billion was in the same paragraph as SBA.
Yeah.
It's one of the bright spots of my day that small business is a priority in this bill. It's the first thing that comes up in the 900 pages. And there was clearly somebody in the room who understood small business problems and also understood regulation of banks and SBA lending, because one of the things they've done is try to address how do you get liquidity, cash, into the hands of small business owners, and how do you make it as least burdensome as possible. In other words, can you turn these loans into grants if they spend the money on their employees? That's what's in there. And the bill does cover these gig economy workers, which I mentioned, who are so important. So that was another plus. And I'm hopeful that if we can get this bill implemented quickly, that it could provide some relief.
We've talked a little bit about the gig economy workers, as you mentioned. We know that the services businesses have been hit hard by this because we've closed down restaurants and hair salons and places where people go for those kinds of services, and so many of them are small businesses. What would you suggest for people who own those businesses? Are there things that they can and should be doing to both weather the storm, but also to think about how do they bounce back and how do they kind of come back online after something like this?
Well, the number one priority right now for everybody, small business owners included, is safety first. You have to make sure you're safe, your family is safe, that your employees are safe. So that often means shutting down, and that's the right thing to do. And we'll worry about the economy after we worry about our people. If a small business can stay open, can provide some services safely, they are choosing to do so, then they can go ahead and do that. But one of the things we want to make sure is that they've got a cash lifeline to bridge them to the time when things can open up again. In the bill, it looks like that number that Treasury and Congress have settled on is 8 weeks. And what the bill says is, we want you to keep paying your employees. We want you to keep paying your employees for two reasons. One, so that they get the money. And some of the most vulnerable workers work for small businesses, and there's a lot of them, as I mentioned earlier. And secondly, we want them to keep on your payroll because that makes it easier for the business to start up again. There's a lot of friction when businesses close down, they go out of business. When they let their employees go, then they have to rehire new employees. And one of the problems we saw in 2009, 2010 is once the small business economy shut down, it was a pretty slow ramp to get it started up again. So we want to make sure that these businesses don't fail, that they don't lose their employees. Employees are like family in small businesses, and they really need to be taken care of by the small business owner. That's what the small business owner wants to do. And one of the things we hope is that Congress has passed a bill that is going to let them get the money to do that.
So if I'm a small business owner and I'm listening to this conversation, is there any advice you would have to offer me about, like, I know that we don't want to be tone deaf, but can we still market? Can we still talk about what we do? Can we still be out there and have a presence in the marketplace, or should we just go dark?
Well, different small businesses are going to have a different response in this. Some actually have a big opportunity, but for the large majority, it's time to conserve cash, to reassess, and to set some priorities. The bill says a very interesting thing. It says that the permitted use of these loans that are going to go out through banks, but with very little restriction, not the usual SBA hoops to jump through. First, pay your employees. Second, pay your rent and pay other debt obligations that you have, and try to keep your business in a shape where it can come back and be part of the economy. And I think that's exactly the right message. Take care of yourself, take care of your people. If you have to take a pause, let's just make sure you get the liquidity. So now the question is, where are you going to get the money? And the answer to that is there's two places. First, call your bank, because your bank where you have a relationship is going to be the first place to go. If you don't have a bank, call a bank. And eventually the small business community is going to start telling each other which bank has got this up and running. I'm talking to all kinds of banks like, JP Morgan and Bank of America and Wells Fargo that are big lenders. Eastern Bank in Massachusetts already has a small business COVID loan up and running. And as soon as this other bill passes, they'll start funding it with the funds that they have. And look on places, there's a company called Alignable that I'm involved with, and they're a community of 4 million small businesses. They're passing information back and forth about what's available. The SBA website is probably pretty well frequented right at this moment, as are the SBA offices, but there's money in the bill for them to hire more people and get the word out.
Yeah, and a lot of small business owners probably have relationships with their local banks too. So another good source and an opportunity for local banks to kind of support these businesses as well.
Well, we want them to be the first port of call, but that requires that the banks get a system up and running right now. I've been also talking to PayPal and Square and some of the fintechs. And as you know, I've been working very much in the fintech community and wrote a book on fintech. So I know these folks. They have a huge network. PayPal that I talked to this morning has 10 million small businesses that they have relationships with for transactions. So they already have the information on those small businesses. They know they're a valid small business. They can authenticate them. And one of the questions is, they're not a bank, so how do they get access to the fire hydrant of money and become a pipe to push money out into the small businesses that they have contact with?
We had one of our listeners send in a question that I thought was pretty interesting. This must be an entrepreneur, because the question was, is this a good time to be thinking about starting a small business? In other words, are there opportunities here that you might be able to take advantage of at a time when other people are running in the opposite direction?
Well, there certainly is an optimistic view out there among entrepreneurs, and I love that. And there's many tales about the businesses that were started in 2008 and 2009. So I don't want to say never, but I would say right now, next 8 weeks, I would assess the situation. I think this is pretty dire. And, I wouldn't throw away any plans that you've got, but I would be moderate at the moment. Keep your family safe, keep social distancing, and think hard about your business and your business problem that you want to attack, but maybe assess the situation in 8 weeks and figure out the game plan.
Yeah. Time for one more. This is a question from another listener about supporting local business. We've heard a lot of people encouraging, takeout or buy gift cards to your favorite restaurants. Are there other things maybe that people can do by way of supporting their small businesses in their community?
Well, to all the big businesses out there, I have a message, which is pay your bills. Big businesses tend at this moment to stretch their payables and hoard their cash. And this could be a real problem for supply chain businesses. One of the things that we did to great effect in the 2009-2010 timeframe is we did something called Quick Pay, which is we paid our government bills to small business contractors in 15 days. In one of the early drafts of this bill, I saw that was in there, that the government would pay again in 15 days. And Ramananda, one of our HBS professors, actually did an economic study, wrote a paper on this, and proved that it was effective at helping these businesses recover and gain more cash. So I would say, if you owe a small business money, you pay your bill right now and put that money into their hands.
That's great advice. Karen, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for all the work that you're doing to help small businesses. I'm sure it goes a long way for them.
Well, thanks to you and thanks to all the students and faculty at HBS. Everybody has come together in this community, and I think they are supporting each other and small businesses, and I think we'll get through this together.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.